Welcome to Rich Tribe. Today, we're jumping right into a brand new explainer on a topic that secretly dictates the lives of millions. Picture this. You land that six-figure job, you're making more money than you ever have in your entire life, and yet by the end of every single month, your bank account is practically sitting at zero. You know, you're surviving, sure, but you're definitely not growing. So how do people stay completely broke without even realizing it's happening?
Wait, seriously, how is that even possible? If you're a high earner, pulling in a massive salary with all those bonuses, shouldn't you just automatically be building wealth? How do people making objectively good money still end up stuck living paycheck to paycheck?
Okay, let's dive into this because it's a fantastic question and it really hits the root of the whole issue. It happens because society basically programs us what we call the middle class mindset.
And that brings us perfectly to part one, the middle class mindset trap.
So from childhood, society traps us in this false sense of security. Our schools and colleges, which, let's be real, are largely designed to just produce employees, teach us that the ultimate goal is getting a stable 9-to-5 job. Settle down and you'll be perfectly fine. But that illusion of stability, it actually prevents real financial growth. We're sold this total myth of job security, but the actual reality is stagnation and layoffs. Let's look at a real-world example. TCS, one of India's biggest employers, recently announced a 7 to 8% salary hike for its employees. Sounds awesome on paper, right? But if inflation is eating away at your money at the exact same time, you aren't actually growing. And get this, in just 3 months, TCS laid off around 12,000 employees. Even billionaires like Mukesh Ambani are constantly launching new ventures because true stability is a complete myth. Life is about growth, not just standing still.
Okay, but hold up. What are people actually supposed to do? Never buy a house? Never drive a reliable car or own a decent smartphone? Are we just supposed to work our whole lives and have absolutely nothing to show for it? No, not at all. The crucial point here is understanding the massive difference between acquiring real assets and funding endless liabilities. The middle class earns income just to fund liabilities that mask themselves as success. Home EMIs, car loans, iPhone installments. You get trapped by this intense emotional pressure society puts on you to keep up appearances, and suddenly all that hard-earned income goes straight to luxury items you don't actually need.
Which leads us right to section 2, wealth is what you hide, tapping into the deep psychology of money. There's this core massive irony in personal finance. Spending money to show people how much money you have is literally the absolute fastest way to have less of it. That deep-seated desire to look rich actually drains your bank account. True wealth isn't about the flashy stuff you show off to the world. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I mean, that sounds perfectly logical in theory, but do people really fall for that at the highest levels? Do you have a real-world example of this actually happening to someone wealthy?
Oh, absolutely. Singer Rihanna nearly went bankrupt early in her career after massive overspending, and she actually sued her financial advisor over it. The advisor's response in court was brutally honest. He literally asked, was it really necessary to tell her that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money? It's hilarious, but it hits the nail on the head. When most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they actually mean is they want to spend $1 million. And that is quite literally the opposite of being a millionaire.
We call this phenomenon lifestyle creep. As your salary grows, you naturally and almost unconsciously inflate your lifestyle. You get a raise, boom, you buy a slightly better car. You get a bonus, you take a way more expensive vacation. It completely destroys your ability to save or invest, keeping you permanently tied to the stress of your next paycheck. All right, moving on to section 3, the hidden poverty tax. Okay, I get it. For the high earners blowing money on Ferraris and designer clothes, but what about the people who aren't buying luxury items at all? What happens when people are just struggling to survive on basic necessities? Surely they aren't broke because of lifestyle creep, right? You are absolutely right to challenge that. It brings us to a really harsh systemic reality called the poverty trap. For folks with the least resources, basic necessities actually cost significantly more. People in poverty are forced into expensive necessities, like buying goods in small, totally uneconomical quantities simply because they can't afford to buy in bulk. They face poor work opportunities, sometimes earning super low wages despite having the right qualifications. Systemically, it literally costs more money to be poor. Man, that sounds incredibly draining. How does dealing with all of that systemic pressure actually affect a person's mindset day to day? Well, it leads to what researchers call survival fatigue. It's this constant cognitive and emotional burden of living with scarcity. When you're stuck in survival mode month to month, your creative spark just dies. You're just trying to keep your head above water.
This fatigue completely kills the mental energy you need for any kind of long-term financial planning or pursuing creative growth. And because of this survival fatigue and the systemic poverty tax, standard financial advice often completely falls apart for people stuck in these traps, which naturally brings us to Section 4, Why Traditional Budgets Fail. Right, so if you read a common personal finance tip like, hey, just make a budget, that implies you actually have disposable income to optimally allocate in the first place. But how do you budget when 80% or more of your income is swallowed up by non-negotiable necessities like rent and food?
Exactly. It's a mathematical impossibility. For someone with zero disposable income, facing high-cost short-term expenses, throwing a traditional budget at them merely highlights that there is simply no fat to trim. The issue isn't the management of money, it's the sheer lack of it, compounded by a system that heavily penalizes scarcity.
Now, before we reveal the actionable solutions to finally break out of this broke cycle, remember to subscribe to Rich Tribe's channel, like, comment, and share. Hitting those buttons helps us bring more of these deep dive explainers directly to you, empowering our community to build real wealth. Finally, let's get into Section 5, Breaking the Broke Cycle. Here are the actionable solutions you need. Regardless of where you're starting from today, it is totally possible to escape the grind and these systemic traps. First up, financial awareness is key. You cannot fix what you don't measure. You must track every penny to catch those unnoticed expenses. Then, adopt zero-based budgeting. This simply means giving every single dollar a job before the month even begins. You create highly specific categories, even dividing your savings into mini categories like job loss or car maintenance, so you aren't terrified to actually use those funds when emergencies hit. And most importantly, treat savings and investments as non-negotiable expenses, paying yourself before you pay any EMIs. So if someone actually follows these steps, stops spiraling into lifestyle creep, and tracks their money, what's the ultimate big picture goal they should be aiming for? The ultimate goal is true financial freedom, and a phenomenal framework for this is the FIRE movement, Financial Independence, Retire Early. It's all about maintaining a high savings rate, well beyond the traditional 10 to 15% recommended by standard planners, and aggressively investing. The objective is to accumulate enough assets to cover your living expenses entirely through passive income, without ever needing traditional employment again. To get there, here is your wealth building toolkit. Start by opening high-interest savings accounts with reputable institutions so your money doesn't just sit there gathering dust, it actually grows. Build passive income through assets like mutual funds, stocks, gold, and silver. Really leverage the power of compound interest. Next, start a side hustle using your evening hours. Don't think it has to make you a millionaire overnight. Even an extra $10K to $20K a month from freelancing or content creation can provide the breathing room to step away from survival mode. And finally, never forget to invest in your own education, skills, and health. We're going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If a sudden layoff happens tomorrow and job security turns out to be the total myth we discussed, would you be forced to sell your car or even your house just to survive? If you don't break out of the middle-class mindset and start building real hidden wealth today, what will you be forced to sacrifice tomorrow? Thank you for joining us for this explainer. Take control of your financial future, and we'll see you next time.